Okay, so last class we cast this from my 2-part mold, right? Pretty quick. It only took about 20 minutes at the most, I think, to make this, but it's got an open bottom. So it's been sitting for 5 days in a damp box, and it's a really nice firmness and consistency to work with right now. I can alter it if I wanted to. I can cut into it. You know, the beauty of having that mold is that you can always really experiment with the pieces that you get out of casting it, right? Because you always can go back and recreate the piece. So like, they become a lot less precious. So really what I'm hoping you guys do with these pieces is experiment with them, you know? Take some risks, maybe think about combining multiple pieces together, building onto them, you know, as long as it's the right consistency and the clay is still soft. Experiment with the surfaces and glaze. We're going to get into that here in a couple weeks after we actually get some of these out and fired. But what I want to do today, real quick, for our quick demo before you move on to other things with the class, I want to seal this off. I want to add a slab to it, so that way it's much more stable. If it's open like this, this is totally fine. It would survive most likely, but it's more susceptible to getting damaged here at the base. If, let's say I want to like ship these cross country to like a show in like Philadelphia or something, they're gonna be a lot more fragile if I don't have something in there to like make it more solid essentially, and to kind of like close this off, and just to create it a more like sturdy sculpture at the base. Things will also like get chipped, just like if you ever scoot stuff around like on a table, if there's no base on it, we just scoot it around, it's really susceptible to actually chipping at the base. So by putting a floor on it, we're really helping prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So it's pretty basic. I just have this slab here. Okay, I threw this just like I did last class when I threw the slabs for this piece. And it's been sitting here for about a half hour. It's still pretty soft. It's just slightly softer than this, and I think that should be okay. Because what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna cup the bottom of it, so once it actually starts to shrink more, because it's got a little bit more moisture in it than this, it'll flatten out a little bit, and it'll stretch with the piece and not crack. And that's kind of our goal. If I were to leave it flat, it might crack, but if I cup it, it should kind of like flatten out and move with the piece. So that's just a little tip. So what I want to do is, I've just made this slab so it's just slightly bigger than the piece. So I will, there it is. I'm going to trace around this, but I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch reveal around my piece and around what I'm going to, the bottom part that I'm going to cut. So I'm actually going to trace right on the piece. And then when I cut it out, I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch past that. Okay, so there's that. So now I'm gonna add a sponge. Someone could lend me a sponge real quick. So here's what I have. Now I'm gonna trace on the outside of that. Thank you so much. And I'll tend to do this at a slight bevel, okay? So the top of my slab is beveled out like that, okay? So when I start to actually add this piece to the base of this, I'm basically pulling up that like little lip of the bevel. So you can see I have my fettling knife here at probably about a 15-degree angle. Okay, so now I have that. Now the next thing I need to do is score. really just roughing that up. Doesn't need to be perfect. And the lip on the base of this, it's kind of narrow, you know. I didn't make thick slabs, which is what I set out to do anyways, so I want it to be a very big, heavy sculpture. You know, the thicker your slabs, the more you can actually manipulate it, you know, once it comes out of the mold, right? So that might be something to think about. Like if you want to make a really thick one, you can really manipulate it and alter it. Okay, so now I'm ready. Just double check. Goes the other way. Okay, perfect. So now I'm gonna sit this, well, actually I'm not gonna sit it down. I will just add a little bit of this slip. I don't overdo this because I don't want a whole lot of it going inside the piece, but just enough. And I usually like to put it on the piece that is going to be the top. So whenever I'm joining pieces together, I like gravity to kind of help pull that slip down to the bottom piece, for instance. So I wouldn't slip the bottom piece and then put my piece on top of it. Does that make sense? So, oh, I do have a sponge. Take this now and try to line it up. I'm really going to compress that, okay? So I'm really going to push that down. What do you want to do here? Grab a paddle. I forgot to grab a paddle. Really kind of squashing that. So I'm going to clean off a lot of this slip. Okay, so now that's all cleaned off. And like I said before, I'm gonna just slowly kind of just paddle this in with my palm. Thank you very much. So, and this is just so that when it does shrink a little bit, it'll move with this, okay? Hopefully. Now I'm going to paddle just the lip where it meets the piece. Now if you can't hold your piece up like I am, most of your pieces are pretty small, but we have a bunch of foam back there. We have some in another room, we can bring some more over, but we have foam back there on top of that white damp cabinet. You can place your piece on that. I'm holding it up while I'm doing this, but you don't have to do that for your piece. So now the next thing I'm going to do, once I have that, I can actually just bring that clay up and just trying to really press that in, but it's because I cut that at a bevel, it's kind of already naturally curved down. And I'm basically just pulling up a little bit of that clay. And the one thing you do have to kind of like look out for, sometimes you'll see that seam like open up, you know? As long as you paddle it really well, it should be okay. And because like some of these marks kind of match the overall aesthetic of the piece, I'm gonna leave some of those on there, you know? So I might even just like, because it's soft, I might just add some of those. But paddling it should help prevent some of that separation that could happen. And last thing I'm gonna do, because it's pretty much on there, is cut a hole. Just like that. Voila! Alright, put it out.